Hello everyone, my name is Massacrebra, and today we're going to find out if we can beat Pokemon Red using only the move Metronome. Metronome is a unique move that selects any move at random for me to use, so essentially I have no control over any of the moves being used in battle. I know this challenge is technically possible, but I'm sure there's going to be a few laughs along the way. And I think we'll be able to do this challenge, but I have a feeling we will need to be a high level in order to survive being attacked as we get some awful RNG luck on some of these moves. I'm following similar rules to other Pokemon challenge runners, and the rules are pretty simple. I can only use Metronome in battle, no items allowed in battle, only outside of battle, and of course no glitches. And one more rule that's unique to this run, if Metronome gives me the ability to transform into another Pokemon or to steal a move, that is allowed since Metronome gave me the ability to do that. Before we begin, if you like the content, please like and subscribe and check out other videos, it'll help a ton. Alright, let's get this run started. For this run, we're going to use Clefairy. Clefairy has really good stats across the board and high HP. With a base special of 60 and enough attack and defense to work with, we should be okay with any moves we might get. It is a little on the slow side, so we won't critical hit a whole lot in this run. We replace Squirtle with Clefairy, but since Clefairy is normal type, it doesn't really matter who the rival uses. As soon as we get Clefairy, we run into a problem. Clefairy doesn't learn Metronome until level 31. Unfortunately, I don't know how to replace the Pokemon's moves unless it's a randomizer, so immediately we fail the challenge. Well, sort of. If you decide to do this run, and please don't do this to yourself, start with a Clefable and it should know Metronome already, and boy do I wish I would have known that. So I decided to level up Clefairy all the way to level 31 before we fight Brock in order to stay true to the challenge the best we can, and this took hours. Clefairy only knows Pound, which is incredibly weak, and then at level 18 we get Double Slap, but it only has 10 power points. So we grind on the likes of level 3 Weedle and Caterpie. We occasionally get Kakuna and Metapod, which give a little bit more experience, but it's a real grind. We have to head to the Pokemon Center to restore PP countless times. This is incredibly tedious, and spoiler alert, this isn't even the worst grind of this run. Finally, after killing hundreds, if not thousands, of some of the weakest Pokemon in the game and 11.5 hours of in-game time, we make it to level 31 and learn Metronome. From this point onward, this is the only move I can use in battle. But my excitement fades away pretty quickly when I realize Metronome only has 10 power points. It's at this point I probably should have decided to quit, but I didn't, and don't you worry, it gets better. Well, better for you, not for me. But before we get into all that, let's go fight Brock. Now we are level 31, so as long as Metronome gives us attacking moves, we should be fine. Against Brock's Geodude, we hit a headbutt for 3/4 HP, miss a rock throw, and then get a pin missile to take it out. His Onix is a one-shot with Flamethrower. For once, Brock really wasn't a roadblock in a run. En route to Mount Moon, I realized something pretty quickly. Well, a couple things. First, we need to save before every trainer. Not even because they'll knock us out, but because it's possible that we'll go through all 10 power points of Metronome and not win. Especially if a trainer has more than one Pokemon. And then it really hit me. The Elite Four have 5 Pokemon each. The chances of me two-shotting each Pokemon in the Elite Four is astronomically small. So we're gonna need more Clefairy, 5 more to be exact. But we can't do that just yet. Clefairy is available in Mount Moon, so we still need to get there. I make my way through the trainers on the way to Mount Moon. I only fought the bare minimum here since I clearly don't need the levels, but really there's nothing too exciting here. Because of our level advantage, as long as we hit him with something, we usually knock him out. I had to run to the Pokemon Center between almost every trainer battle here. Make sure you stop at the Pokemart and buy some Pokeballs though. I bought 15 to catch Clefairy with, and also a couple Antidote. Eventually we do make it to Mount Moon and restore our power points before we go in. We can't get repels just yet though, so we're gonna have to run from quite a few battles. Our goal in Mount Moon is to only have to go through it once. So once again, we're only going to take on necessary battles, but we do have some other tasks to do while we're here. We're going to get a rare candy of course, but there's also 2 Moonstones here which we definitely want. We can use one right away to evolve our Clefairy into Clefable. Now in all of Mount Moon there's only 2 mandatory trainer battles, a Rocket Grunt and then the Super Nerd with the fossils. Our first attempt at the Grunt went poorly, so it was a reset due to missing too much. We need enough PP for both trainers here or we'll have to go through Mount Moon again, and frankly I really don't want to. The second attempt was really a best case scenario. We transform into his Rattata and quick attack our way through the fight, so we only used 1 Metronome. So now that he's out of the way, we're going to catch our Clefairies. You're definitely going to want to save beforehand and then save in between each Clefairy that you catch. We aren't going to weaken them so we can save our power points and Pokeballs if they aren't caught within a few throws. Clefairy has a 6% chance I believe of spawning here, so it might take a little bit, but honestly I got pretty lucky. A few were caught on the first try and it took about an hour to catch 5, but none of them know Metronome yet, so we really can't even use them for a while. Be sure to remember the hidden moonstone here as well. Now we can go to our fight with the super nerd and our last battle in Mount Moon. We ran out of power points in the first attempt. The second attempt we one-shot Grimer with Razor Wind, crit with Drill Peck against Voltorb, and then a super effective dig on Coughing. That's about as polar opposite as two fights can get. We leave Mount Moon and enter Cerulean. I make sure to heal and grab the hidden rare candy first. Now we have the choice to either fight Misty or Rival 2. I don't think we would have an issue either way, but I decided to go to Rival 2 first. The only thing we really have to be concerned about here is our power points and possibly getting sand attacked by Pidgeotto. We really want to avoid missing attacks here since we aren't guaranteed a chance to attack to begin with. Pidgeotto goes down on our third attack with Barrage. We get a Razor Leaf on Abra that always crits, and against Rattata we hit with Thrash. Thrash is actually a decent move in this run. It hits for 2 to 3 turns with 90 power and 100 accuracy. The downside though is you get confused when it ends, but guaranteed hits are super nice to have. Now that Rival 2 is done, we need to start what seems like a never-ending grind session. I move a Clefairy to the first spot in my party, and for the foreseeable future, we will be switching it out with a Clefable every battle so they split experience. My Clefairies are at level 10 and we need to get them to 31 to be usable, so we might as well start right now. Nugget Bridge is pretty uneventful. We beat a trainer or two, head back to the Pokemon Center, and repeat. We only had one reset, so all in all, not terrible luck. There is a hidden elixir you will need for later, just north of the first hiker after Nugget Bridge. We will need these for the Elite Four. I'll spare you some of the grinding as I fight all the trainers here to help level up our Clefairy and make frequent stops at the Pokemon Center. As soon as we get the SS Sand voucher from Bill, I'm gonna head to the daycare and have them watch one of my Clefairy. Normally I wouldn't be a fan of doing this in a run, but I'll make an exception here as it'll save me a ton of time as it will passively grind one of my Clefairy for me. We can just pick it up when it hits level 31. Now it's time for Misty's gym. Again, I fight all the trainers in her gym, which is just one extra fight for the experience. Against the first trainer, we get an absolute dud of a battle where we barely attack. The second attempt goes much better though, and we'll just skip ahead to Misty. After a couple fights where we literally don't attack at all, we get this one. It takes a few weak attacks to take down Staryu, and Starmie goes down to a Karate Chop that I believe always critical hits. And now that we have our second badge, let's do a little check-in. We're at 14 hours of in-game time and our second Clefairy is only at level 17. So it's gone up 7 levels since Nugget Bridge. The grind is real. After Misty, we head to Vermilion City, and my thought was that now would be a good time to train up our second Clefairy. I head to the area east of Vermilion and fight the trainers, but unfortunately the wild Pokemon here are just not a high enough level to really make it worth grinding. I do catch a Spearow though, so we can trade it for Ducks, which is a great HM user as it can learn both Fly and Cut. I realize that if I'm going to train up my Clefairy now, Diglett Cave is probably a much better option. The Diglett are usually around level 18 or 19, and you will get the occasional Dugtrio that's around level 30 and great experience. Be sure to catch one of the Diglett too, since it will know Dig, which you can use to dig out of Diglett Cave and go right to the Pokemon Center to restore power points. Any little time save is going to help at this point. At 17 hours and 20 minutes of in-game time, we finally get our Clefairy up to level 31. Only fitting that it happened right after a fight where our Clefable uses Self-Destruct, and of course I immediately use one of our Moonstones to evolve it into Clefable. We pop a new Clefairy in our party's first spot and head to the SS Sand. My goal in the SS Sand originally was to fight all the trainers, but after doing one of the floors I realized that it was probably quicker to go back to Diglett Cave and train there. The experience from the trainer battles was a little higher, but it was still quicker to farm Diglett, and the occasional Dugtrio made it worth it to stay here. After an incredible grinding session, we have our third Clefairy at level 31. Our game time is now at 21 hours and 22 minutes, so it took about 3 hours to get our Clefairy leveled up enough, and I did cheat and use some rare candies at the end because I just couldn't take it anymore. So finally we can continue on with the game. We're going to take on Rival 3 in the SS Sand so we can learn Cut afterward. Our Clefairy is still our first Pokemon in the party, and it does a decent job slowly knocking down Pidgeotto. For Raticate, I switched to Clefable and we one-shot it with Sludge. Kadabra takes a Seismic Toss and a Fire Punch, but goes down without doing much to us. Lastly is Ivysaur, and we get a Pound that does pretty big damage somehow, and then an Egg Bomb for the victory. Rival 3 is always pretty weak, and our level advantage is pretty huge right now. Now we head to the Pokemon Center, grab Ducks from the box, and teach it Cut. Time for Lieutenant Surge. His trash can puzzle wasn't horrible this time, so let's take him on and see how it goes. I left our Clefairy in just to see what it can do against the Voltorb. We get a pretty weak wing attack, a Sonic Boom, and Bide. Luckily Voltorb hits us with a couple tackles, so Bide knocks him out. Up next is Pikachu, and Clefairy one-shots it with Double Edge. Now I switch out for Clefable since his Raichu is pretty tough. It outspeeds us, but we hit it with Payday, Thunder Punch, and 2 turns of Clamp to knock it out. It feels really good to have more than one Pokemon to use right now. We now have 3 badges and we can move on. I check in with the daycare to see what our Clefairy is at, and its level's gone up by 13, so it should be at level 23 now. Not too bad, but we can definitely leave him here for a while. Time to head to Cerulean, and I love this clip for some reason. You can literally tell by my character's movement that I forgot to do something. So we turn around and head back to Vermilion. We forgot 2 things actually. We need the bike voucher, and now that we have cut, we can go grab the 3rd Moonstone and evolve our Clefairy. We handle those errands real quick, get the bike from the bike shop, heal up, and now we can finally go to the very appropriately named Rock Tunnel. Rock Tunnel is super uneventful though. There's a few mandatory trainer battles here, and I get some bad Metronome luck, so I have to dig out a couple times to get back my power points. But we make it through, and no battles were really worth narrating. Remember to grab the max ether hidden in this rock when you leave though, and then now we're gonna fast forward to Celadon since we can't really do anything in Lavender right now. The first thing we do in Celadon is grab the hidden and amazingly named PP up, which will boost our PP from 10 to 12 for one of our Metronomes. We grab a fresh water for the guards and then head to Rocket Game Corner. There's a second PP up hidden in... Wait, are these palm trees? I don't think I've ever really paid attention here, but yeah, there's a PP up hidden in one of these weirdly small indoor palm trees. Anyway, we take on Giovanni, and yes, we are gonna level up yet another Clefairy. Onix uses Rage while we do pretty much nothing for a few rounds, and then we knock it out with Psychic. Next is Rhyhorn, and we quickly knock it down to yellow health with a Psybeam. Then we use Vice Grip and Toxic to leave it with a sliver of health, and High Jump Kick connects to knock it out. Lastly is Kangaskhan, and we have 1 power point left with this Clefairy, and it uses Splash. Alright then, next Clefable. Kangaskhan uses Rage, and we hit pretty hard with the Psychic. We don't attack for a few turns, connect with a Pound, miss a few more attacks, and then knock it out with a Nightshade. We get the Self Scope and can now take on the Pokemon Tower. The first battle in the tower is an extremely underleveled Rival 3, so let's see how that goes. We start off by missing 3 moves against his Pidgeotto and then one-shotting it with Rock Slide. Next up is his Gyarados, and it makes quick work of us. He hits with a Dragon Rage and then back-to-back Hydro Pumps to knock us out. Our second Clefable comes in and we hit it with Bubble for a sliver and then connect with Slam, which takes it down to 0. We use Rest against his Growlith, which wastes a few turns. Then we do almost nothing with Mega Drain, but we do knock it out with a super effective Rock Slide. Kadabra goes down quickly with a takedown since it has low defense, and lastly we have Ivysaur. We waste about 5 turns doing absolutely nothing, and then we actually hit him with Horn Drill, which is an automatic one-hit KO move. Now we can move on to the rest of the Pokemon Tower, and it's really annoying. We already have a problem with using moves that actually hit, and now that's going to be amplified since lots of moves in the game don't hit Ghost Pokemon. Our first trainer battle here is a good example. We missed 7 moves in a row before hitting Mimic and learning Nightshade. We use the rest of our PP to knock it out and send out our second Clefable. We get confused, which is going to drag this out a little bit longer. After a few turns of hitting ourselves, we hit a Bubble Beam and a Fire Blast to knock it out. Luckily, Pokemon Tower has this area here that heals you, and we'll be using it quite a few times. The rest of the Pokemon Tower is pretty much more of the same though, lots of getting confused, wasting moves, and long battles. Eventually we make it through and rescue Mr. Fuji and get the Pokeflute. I decided to check in with the daycare, and our Clefairy is at exactly level 31. We give it a Moonstone, so that gives us 4 Clefable now, which is super useful. We head back to Celadon and head to the grass gym with Erika. I decided to clear out the trainers first to help level up our Clefairy. Another thing you'll notice is that we really aren't super over-leveled at this point. Maybe a little, but now we have 5 Pokemon we need to train up instead of just the 1 we would normally have in a solo run. We're gonna have to fight really every trainer battle we can, so when we reach the Elite Four we won't be super under-leveled. After knocking out all of the trainers in the gym and hitting the Pokemon Center a few times, we take on Erika. Her Victory Bell was pretty ruthless. It puts me to sleep, uses Wrap, hit with a critical hit Razor Leaf, and poisons me, and then hits me with a Wrap Poison combo, and as I'm about to faint, my Clefable clutches up with the Ultimate Sacrifice, a self-destruct for the knockout. Tingla wasn't as bad, we hit it with a Clamp and a Takedown to finish it off. Vileplume immediately poisons us, but we land a Mega Kick to knock it to red health. We then get Transform, and both of us use Petal Dance until I knock it out. That's badge number 4, and we're at 26 hours of in-game time, and spoiler alert, we're not even close to done. We head over to the bike path, fight a bunch of extra trainers, and eventually make our way to Fuchsia City. We also get our Clefairy up to level 31, but we don't have a Moonstone right now, so it's gonna stay Clefairy for a little bit. I head to Koga's gym and knock out all the extra trainers, and then I decide to go to Silphco before attempting the gym. We're gonna need the levels anyway, and I'm not joking when I say I fought every trainer battle in Silphco. We may have missed 1 or 2, but when we finally take on Rival 5, we're at 30 hours of in-game time, and you can kinda see why I decided to fight so many extra battles. Our level advantage here is basically non-existent. We get a critical hit Tri-Attack and eventually Poison takes down his Pidgeot. Next is his Gyarados, and he hits us with a couple Hydro Pumps and a Bite to knock us out. He finally starts missing some Hydro Pumps, but still almost knocks us out. We hit him with a Tri-Attack and then a Petal Dance finally takes him out, but we're at pretty low HP. His Growlith knocks us out pretty quickly as Petal Dance ends. Our next Clefable Metronome's an agility, and then a critical hit Psychic to knock it out. Next up is this Alakazam, which we sludge to half HP and get a poison, but our Metronome is disabled, meaning we can't use this Clefable anymore. We switch out for our last Clefable and Alakazam starts to use Recover. He gets back to full health basically, and then we hit Stomp to bring it back to red, and eventually Poison takes it out. Lastly is Venusaur, and we hit it with Fly and Gust, but we're at pretty low HP and he takes us out. Luckily Metronome is no longer disabled, so we can switch back in and knock it out with a Vice Grip. That was actually pretty close. That was the first time in a while that we faced a trainer that actually knocked out most of our team, and we were running pretty low on power points. After Rival 5, we heal, grab Lapras, and take on Giovanni. Now for this Giovanni fight, I'm gonna let the footage roll and kind of talk about the rest of this run. Now that we have lost our level advantage, this is what a serious fight looks like. We use a ton of power points and go through a couple Clefairy. Losing those power points is huge though, because come Elite Four time, we can't just go heal in between battles. We have to make sure we have enough power points for all 5 battles. Oh, and of course, we have to be strong enough to actually do good damage with our Pokemon once we actually do get a good move with Metronome. And a little spoiler alert here, we're at 30 hours of in-game time and we aren't even at the halfway point of the total time this run takes. But for now, we handle Giovanni and we can head back to Fuchsia to fight Koga. Koga wasn't too terrible. His coughing wastes a bunch of time as we continually miss moves, but we eventually take it down. Muck takes a Hyper Fang and a Bite before we have to switch to our second Clefable. We miss a bunch before hitting a Tri-Attack for decent damage, then eventually getting a Seismic Toss to finish it off. His second coughing doesn't do much to us as we sort of nickel and dime it down to yellow health, and then on our last power point of Metronome, we self-destruct to knock it out. We put out a fresh Clefable, and I like the self-destruct strategy so much that I decided to do it again and we knock out his Weezing. Obviously I didn't actually have control over the moves, but that was fantastic. After Koga, we hit the Safari Zone, but there's not much to go over here, so let's fast forward to Cinnabar Island and Blaine. We do feint all the trainers in his gym for experience, and Blaine himself wasn't too horrible. We miss a bunch against this Growlith, but we do land a Bubble and an Earthquake to knock it out. Next up is Ponyta, and we hit it with a Flamethrower, Super Fang, and a crit Psybeam. Our Clefable decides to use mostly grass moves against his Rapidash, and something that's become a bit of a theme lately, decides to use Explosion for his last power point of Metronome, and we both faint. Our next Clefable hits with Blizzard, Solar Beam, and Clamp, but takes a nasty Fire Blast in the process and we get burned. It eventually faints, and then our next Clefable takes a crit Flame Blast and also gets burned, and we retaliate with Splash. Another Fire Blast takes it out, so Clefable 4 comes out and hits with a weak Razor Leaf. We then hit with Confuse Ray and do absolutely nothing while Arcanine takes itself out. We didn't really have the best of luck against Blaine, but it was a first try victory, so we're gonna skip straight to Sabrina. Sabrina starts off with a Kadabra, and we hit with a Rolling Kick and then crit with Solar Beam to knock it out. Next up is Mr. Mime. We hit with a Clamp for a few turns and then get Mimic. Unfortunately, we're out of power points though, so we have to switch to our next Clefable. Our new Clefable hits with a Mega Punch and finishes off Mr. Mime. Then we hit Venomoth with a Dragon Rage, which always hits for 40. After a couple turns, we hit Clamp and then a Tri-Attack to knock it out. Lastly is Alakazam, when it outspeeds and uses Psywave, which actually hits pretty hard. We use Rest to heal up, and then Alakazam starts to use Recover. We hit a few more times, but Recover is getting really annoying. Even a Mega Punch didn't take it out, and the Wing Attack following left it with a sliver of health as we get a critical hit. Our next Clefable uses a Simple Scratch for the win, and that's our 7th badge. There's really not much extra to do at this point, so let's go straight to Giovanni for the final badge. Giovanni starts off with a level 45 Rhyhorn, and we hit it with a Boomerang for some decent damage and eventually knock it out, but it took 7 Metronomes. Dugtrio comes in and we one-shot it with a Dizzy Punch. We bring out a Substitute against Nidoqueen and then destroy it with Psychic. Pretty good luck so far. We only have 2 power points left though for Nidoking, but Swift knocks it to 50% HP and then Slash takes it out. Time to move on to our second Clefable. Our new Clefable comes in, throws up a barrier, and then one-hit KOs Rhydon with a Horn Drill. That was some of the best luck I've had in a while. That's all 8 badges, and technically there's only a few battles left in the game. We heal up and head to Victory Road, but of course we have Rival 6 first. His level 47 Pidgeot hits with a quick attack, but we land a critical hit Scratch and Karate Chop to bring it to red health. Then a Thunder Shock knocks it out and Rhyhorn is next. We hit with Dragon Rage and Constrict, but then a Hydro Pump lands to knock it out. Gyarados comes in and we put it to sleep and hit with a Vice Grip before running out of power points. While Gyarados is asleep though, we essentially do nothing, but we slowly knock him out with Comet Punches and Absorb at the end. Growlith is next and we hit with a Sludge and it's poisoned. Only a matter of time till it faints, but we won't do anything to speed it up as we run out of power points. At this point, I decide to keep switching between the 2 Clefables that are done for the rest of this battle to help conserve power points. A few turns later, and Growlith faints. We have 2 Clefable left and Alakazam comes out. We take a decent Psybeam and respond with a Spike Cannon that takes Alakazam below half HP. Then Alakazam starts to spam recover, and that would have been brutal, but he randomly stops so we could knock it out with Sky Attack. Venusaur is last, and he outlevels us by a lot. He knocks out our Clefairy after a super effective wing attack does basically nothing. Our last Clefable hits him with Blizzard, and he still has over half HP, but we get an incredibly lucky freeze. He won't attack now, but we still have to actually land attacks to finish him off, and we miss, and miss, and miss. Our rival uses a potion which somehow actually saves him from being knocked out, and on our second to last Metronome we use Explosion, knocking out both Pokemon, giving us the win. I literally couldn't have written a better narrative if I tried. After Rival 6, it's time to head to Victory Road. Since there are no mandatory trainer battles here, it's a pretty straightforward walk before we get to the Indigo Plateau. Judging by my Pokemon's levels though, I know we're in for a grind before we have a chance. But not just any grind, this is a Metronome challenge, so of course it can't be simple. Normally we could grind through the Elite Four, but that's not really possible in this run. Well, it is possible, but it would be a waste of a ton of time, and here's why. The first trainer of the Elite Four is Lorelei, and she leads off with a Dugong. Dugong isn't going to knock all of our Clefable out in one hit or anything like that, but what it will do is spam Rest. Rest puts Dugong to sleep for 2 turns, but it also fully heals itself. So what this means is we either have to one-shot it, or hit it, let it use Rest, and then get lucky enough to knock it out before it wakes up and uses Rest again. If we train here, we're going to knock out Dugong so slowly that it will literally take days to gain enough experience to level up our team. So to avoid all that, we're going to head back to Victory Road and train here. And this takes forever. While I was grinding, I realized something else though. There's a limited amount of PP restoring items in this game. If I use 6 Pokemon, that means I only have enough Ethers and Elixirs to restore each Pokemon's power points twice. And I don't want to get too technical here, but Pokemon has a statistic called effort values. Basically, when you defeat a Pokemon, its stats will be converted to EVs and then added to your Pokemon when it levels up. So essentially, the 4 or so Clefable that I've been using the longest, and especially the one I got from Professor Oak in the beginning of the game, will be better than the Clefable I can train up now. So taking all of that into account leads me to believe that I'd be better off using the 4 Clefable for the Elite Four and essentially ignoring the other 2. This means that I don't have to grind for quite as long though, so needless to say, I do like this plan. But before we get to this incredibly long grind session, I decided to go back through and pick up the rest of the power point restoring items in the game that I could. There's not too many though, I think I end up with 12, and then we head back to Victory Road for an incredibly long and tedious grind session. My goal is to get my 4 Clefables up to level 60 because we really only have one shot of the Elite Four. And since I'm going to save in between all the members, once we use our power point restoring items and save, we have to commit to the Elite Four at that point or we wouldn't have enough items to make the run possible. I make a save before the grind session at 33 hours and 33 minutes of in-game time. Fast forward a little bit, and when we finally finish the grind session, we are at 68 hours. 35 hours of grinding on Pokemon using only Metronome and running to the Pokemon Center probably a few hundred times to restore power points. This was terrible. The worst grind I've ever done in a video game, but I made it this far, so let's see it through. Our 4 Clefable are at level 60 now, but of course I bring our last Clefable and Clefairy just in case. You never know what could happen. The first member of the Elite Four is Lorelei. We land a decent low kick on our Dugong, and it immediately uses Rest. Our old friend Explosion comes back and both Pokemon faint. Probably not the best of luck for us here, but I can't help but love it. Our second Clefable does nothing for a while, hits with an Earthquake, and then does nothing some more until it faints. I thought about resetting, but I decided not to. Our third Clefable comes in and hits with Psychic to finish off Cloyster. Slowbro comes out next and takes a Fire Punch, Boomerang, Leech Life, and another Fire Punch, and then we finally knock it out with Slash. Our power points are getting very low as Jinx comes out. We hit Jinx with a Sludge for about 2/3 HP, and then a Hyper Beam takes it out with our last power point. Lapras comes out and we confuse it, but it hits us with 2 Body Slams anyway. We heal up and then it finally hits itself in confusion and we get Petal Dance. Petal Dance is super effective and hits for multiple turns, so we beat Lorelei and move on. We use more PP than I wanted to in that last battle, but we heal up, restore power points, and then continue on to Bruno. He starts with Onix and we miss a few moves and then one-shot it with Bubble. Hitmonchan is next. We exchange attacks for a few rounds, but we get him down to about 1/3 HP and then Skull Bash him for the win. Bruno sends out Hitmonlee, and we only have 2 power points left, but Clefable hits with a clutch Psybeam for a 1-hit KO. Our last Metronome is Peck, so that's it for our first Clefable. Onix uses Rage, and we hit it with a super effective Rolling Kick, and a Hyper Fang knocks it out. Lastly is Machamp, and we Seismic Toss it for 66 damage, Body Slam it down to a Sliver, and then Waterfall for the win. Bruno is down, and next is Agatha, and I know this is going to be brutal. Agatha uses 3 Ghost Pokemon, so our chances to actually hit are going to be much lower. But the bigger problem is how much she loves to confuse and put my Pokemon to sleep. Now let's take a look at this first attempt. I constantly get confused and put to sleep to the point where my first Clefable gets taken out and we've done absolutely nothing. And then the same exact thing happens with the next Clefable. I even get confused while I'm already asleep. So we're gonna need some serious luck here. Our next attempt went a little better, with Gengar at least. We were confused but fought through it pretty well. We used an Ice Beam, which I was screaming for the freeze, but we aren't that lucky. We do get Dig soon after and knock out Gengar. Golbat isn't really too concerning though, as we knock it out with a Sky Attack and a Double Edge. Haunter comes out and we hit it with a Vine Whip for almost nothing and then get confused and put to sleep by it, so I just decide to switch to a new Clefable. Our new Clefable comes in and it is immediately confused and eventually put to sleep, so I switch again and we get a super lucky transform. So now we essentially get to be Haunter with 5 power points for each of his moves. We go for Hypnosis and knock it out with a couple Nightshade. I go for Hypnosis again with Arbok and instead use Dream Eater since it's super effective. Lastly is Gengar again and we use the same strategy. We put it to sleep and knock it out with Nightshade and Dream Eater. Now that transform was super clutch. Agatha was pretty rough, but I'm glad it didn't take too many attempts. And next up is Lance and his Dragon Pokemon. Lance starts with Gyarados, who I thought we were going to have to one-shot quickly, but Clefable can tank Hyper Beams pretty well, which means Gyarados has to recharge for a turn, which only helps us have more chances to use decent moves. We eventually knock it out and move on to his Dragonairs. We get a Fire Blast, which hits for about a third, and then go figure an Explosion again, so we both faint. His second Dragonair hits us with Dragon Rage again, but then goes down to a one-hit move Guillotine. Next is Aerodactyl, and we pretty much fizzle out and do nothing and run out of power points. Our next Clefable comes out and gets crit with Takedown and hit with Bite to take us down to 83 HP, but we respond with an incredible clutch Thunderbolt and he's on his last Pokemon, a level 62 Dragonite. We use Fly and get a crit, but it only hits for about a third. Then we get hit with Slam, which almost knocks us out, and we use a weak Water Gun. We hit again with a weak Strength before Hyper Beam takes us out. We're on our last strong Clefable. We immediately get Hyper Beamed again for over 100 HP, and then we both miss for a few turns. We finally hit with Comet Punch, which hits 5 times, but for weak damage. Unfortunately, this puts Dragonite into healing range, so Lance uses a Hyper Potion to heal it up. Now we both just kind of stat boost and do nothing for a while. We eventually run out of power points, and all we have left is our weak Clefable and Clefairy. They don't last super long though, so if getting Hyper Beam one-shot twice is lucky, then yes, we got super lucky. Unfortunately though, we do have to reset and try again. This time we get in a really slow fight with Gyarados. He uses a couple Hyper Beams and we land some weak attacks to whittle him down until we eventually land an Ice Beam to finish him off. Our last power point of Metronome uses a Body Slam that almost one-shots Dragonair, but he's left in red health and now we have to switch. Lance heals it up and then we hit a 3-turn Spike Cannon to bring Dragonair back down to half health. We followed it up with a Bind that puts him to red health again. We put it to sleep, then finally Lick knocks it out with our last power point. He sends out another Dragonair and I bring out my third Clefable. We waste a couple moves and then hit Boomerang to bring it to half HP. Once again we put it to sleep and use a Pound, which brings it down to healing range again, so Lance heals it to full health. Then, as my Clefables love to do, they hit a Rolling Kick and then an Ice Beam with its last power point to knock it out. After this, the battle takes a turn for the worst and we lose out. We're so close to winning, but I do need a little bit better move luck. If our first Clefable can get through 2 of his Pokemon instead of just 1, I feel like we'd have a really good shot, so let's press our luck and try one more time. Our next battle starts off with more of the same though. We get Hydro Pump twice and Hyper Beam while only taking Gyarados down to about 2/3 HP, but we hit a critical hit Thunder Punch to knock it out. We have low HP for Dragonair, and we hit it with a good Mega Punch to leave it with just about a quarter HP, but then we get knocked out with Slam. Our next Clefable comes in and hits Super Fang, which doesn't knock it out, so Lance gets to heal Dragonair to full health. We finally get some luck though as we use Thrash, which is going to hit pretty hard for a few turns. The first Dragonair goes down after 2, and then the next Dragonair gets 1 hit with a crit. Aerodactyl comes out and we're confused now and get Hyper Beam for 150 HP. We don't really do much until we knock ourselves out from being confused. Our third Clefable comes in and hits a Rock Slide that leaves Aerodactyl with maybe 20% HP left. Unfortunately, we follow that up with Pound, which puts Aerodactyl into healing range, so Lance heals him up. Our Clefable uses a couple weak attacks to slowly bring him down and takes a Hyper Beam in the process, but we get Clamp, which is super effective and knock Aerodactyl out in 2 turns. Dragonite comes out now, and our Clefable whiffs with his last power point, so we send out our last good Clefable. We waste a few turns to get Hyper Beam for 107 and then use Leech Seed. This might help keep us alive for a little bit. We use Thunderbolt, which hits decently hard, but he responds with Hyper Beam, which comes dangerously close to knocking us out. We use a couple weak moves, and Dragonite has to recharge and misses an attack, so Leech Seed is feeding us some of his HP, and then we paralyze his Dragonite. Are we gonna get a Leech Seed victory here? We Metronome into a Waterfall, which brings it super close to fainting while Dragonite decides to use Barrier until Leech Seed finally takes it out. What a weird victory, but I'll take it, and we have 1 battle left. I heal up, restore all of our PP, and let's do this. Our rival starts with a level 61 Pidgeot, and we come out swinging with a Psychic that hits for about a third and then a Double Kick that hits for about another third. We waste a couple turns and then knock it out with an Aurora Beam. Our rival sent out Alakazam, who outspeeds us, but we hit with a Drill Peck for about a quarter HP. We take a crit Psybeam for over 100 and then use Spore, which puts Alakazam to sleep. We take advantage of sleep by using Skull Bash that somehow doesn't knock out Alakazam, so he gets to use Recover a couple times to get back to full health. We hit with Ember and then a crit Mega Punch to knock it out. We have Rhydon next. We use our last PP for Headbutt, and then are forced to switch to our second Clefable. We get a Bubble which hits for about half, and then of course, Explosion which knocks us both out. That one kind of sucks. We had plenty of health and power points left, but what can you do? Onto our third Clefable, and our rival sends out Gyarados. We hit for half with Takedown, and then get hit with a Hydro Pump. We put Gyarados to sleep, and then don't do a whole lot with it unfortunately. But when it wakes up, we hit with a Vine Whip that knocks him out. He only has 2 Pokemon left, but we waste our last 2 power points and are forced to switch into our last good Clefable. He sent out Arcanine, who immediately hit us with 2 takedowns. We get off a double team which will help raise our evasiveness, but Arcanine lures us a bunch and then for some reason uses Ember which keeps us alive. We finally hit with a Headbutt and Body Slam to knock it out. We're onto his last Pokemon, but we only have 72 HP left and a couple power points, and it's not enough to get lucky. That explosion really hurt in that battle, so we reset and try again. This time the Pidgeot fight goes about the same. We hit him a few times to bring him down to about half, and he kept using Sky Attack which takes 2 turns. Eventually we use Takedown though, which knocks it out and leaves us with about 150 HP and a good amount of power points left. Alakazam comes out next. We get blasted with a crit Psybeam, but we hit pretty hard with a Mega Punch. We take another Psybeam but knock it out with a double slap, but we only have 27 HP left. And then with a stroke of luck, Clefable hits right on with Surf, and that's a one-hit KO. Gyarados comes out and Hyper Beams us, but our first Clefable took out his first 3 Pokemon, so we're looking pretty good. Our second Clefable comes out and gets destroyed by Dragon Rage and a couple Hyper Beams though, so the lead that our first Clefable gave us is just about gone now. We send out our third Clefable and he gets Hydro Pumped and Hyper Beamed down to low health. We hit with a few weak moves and then land a Nightshade that leaves Gyarados in the red. Then we get Seismic Toss to finish it off. Our rival sends out Arcanine, and even though we only have 18 health, we hit with a Karate Chop and a Headbutt to knock it out, so once again we're onto his last Pokemon. Our almost dead Clefable hits with 2 Sludges before being knocked out, which takes Venusaur down to about half HP. Our last good Clefable comes out and hits with a critical Headbutt, which brings Venusaur down to almost nothing, and he responds with a critical hit Solar Beam, which brings us down to 5 HP. Then we cast Substitute, which we don't even have enough HP to use, and we get Razor Leaf to death. Now it's up to our 2 low level Pokemon to hopefully deal 5 damage and win this for us. We send out our level 36 Clefable, so we're almost 30 levels lower at this point. Venusaur takes in Sunlight for Solar Beam, and we use Spore to put it to sleep. We Metronome in a Tri-Attack to take out Venusaur and win the run. Honestly, that run was incredibly annoying, but some of the battles were extremely fun. Not having any control though was pretty brutal. It seemed like a press A simulator for an excruciatingly long time. I do love the fact that we had to count on a level 36 Clefable to bring it home though. It was really fitting for a run like this. If you enjoyed my content, please like, subscribe, and share, and you can also check out my last run where we tackled Gen 1 with only a Charmander. Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace!